So you're looking for a direct drive extruder. Let me tell you about my experience that I've had with the Biqu H2 V2S Lite. Would I recommend this extruder to anybody? There are some pros, but there are some very serious cons as well. Some based on time, it may get better, some of these things may go away, and another that is probably not going to change. So let's jump into it. I was looking into getting direct drive because I needed more space for my printers. I had it set up as a printer, a dryer, a printer, a dryer. The spools would sit in the dryers, whether they were going or not, and that space that the dryers were taking up, if I could alleviate that space, if I could feed the spools from the front or the back, I would gain a lot of space. I could have more printers. We all want more printers. So I reached out to a friend who had told me that he had been on direct drive for a long time. He'd probably gone through many different versions. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, what direct drive would you recommend? I know that you've done a lot of direct drive setups. And he said, just go look at the Biqu H2 V2. I highly recommend it. So I went to Amazon, checked it out, and it was very cheap. It was like $60, I think. I thought, okay, I was looking at a micro Swiss at the time, which I think was like 90, 100, somewhere there in that range. I thought, man, 60, that's worth. And then there was a V2S Lite, and it was $20 more at the time. And I thought, 20 bucks, that's worth. I'm gonna get the V2S Lite. And my friend didn't even know that the V2S Lite was out. So I had ordered it, I was ready to go. I had pulled my printer out and I was very ready. It arrived, went through all the box, all the instructions and everything else. I took it all apart and I went, okay, yeah, simple installation to a degree. I started putting it all together. Now, in the book, it says that the nozzle is an M4. Now, I'd never heard of an M4. Granted, I am only running Elegoo Neptune 2s, which are essentially Ender 3 clones. And so they have those small nozzles. And the nozzles that this comes with are very long. But I'd never heard of an M4. I'd heard of an M6 on the volcanoes, and that was it. So you'll see a photo here. I took this photo, sent it to my friend, and I'm like, hey, this nozzle's weird. They only supply you with 1.6 nozzle. That's it, one. And I do my printing with 0.4. Now, granted, a lot of people have shifted to a 0.6 to speed up their prints, and they don't really see any difference in the quality. There are some prints that I print that require a 0.4 because the quality, especially around corners, are not quite as good as a 0.6. So I knew that I would need one, and I wanted to get the ball rolling. And this is the first problem with buying the V2S Lite. Biqu have released this product too early. These nozzles don't exist, essentially. I loaded up Amazon, I typed in M4 nozzle, nothing was coming up. And I thought that I was the problem. So I went to Google, I typed in M4 nozzle, nothing showed up. I started to stress out that I had orders coming in. I had purchased this so that I could get more printers in the space, increase my print quality, and I was starting to really stress out. So when I reached out to my friend, I'm like, hey, this M4 nozzle, like, what's the go? Where do you get yours from? He went, oh, that's a really long nozzle, like the Volcano, which he has some Volcanoes. And he said, that's not what my H2 is running. And I went, oh, well, I bought the H2S Lite, the V2S Lite. He goes, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. I showed him and he went, oh, I might upgrade to that because that's obviously lighter, but this nozzle was a problem. So I reached out to Biqu by email and on their Facebook page, and a few days went by and I got back an email, and this is the second problem with buying a V2S Lite. My experience with their support was less than satisfactory, let's put it that way. I said, hey, there's only one nozzle with this. It's a 0.6 millimeter nozzle. I need 0.4s and I might need a 0.8 at some point, maybe even a 1.0. What's going on with this? I can't seem to find it anywhere. It's not even on your website. Like, what's going on? A few days go by, they reach out to me again and they said, this only comes with a 0.6 millimeter nozzle. And I went, well, I didn't ask what it comes with. I can clearly see what it comes with. It's written in the book. I have it in my hand. I can measure it. I know that it's an M4, it's 4 millimeters. How can I get more? That was my question. So I had to go a few days to get a reply, and it didn't even answer my question. So I already knew there was a language barrier, and which is quite typical for any printer company. I messaged them again and I said, no, I understand, but I am in need of these other sizes. How can I get some? And they said, let me check with my workmate and I'll get back to you. Granted, I had to wait a couple days for that response. Then I had to wait another couple days because then he'd finally got a hold of his workmate, which is strange. because throughout this, I received many emails saying, let me check with my workmate. And I thought to myself, if your workmate is the person with all of the answers, why is it that you exist in this company? Don't you think that your workmate should be the person doing the emailing? I don't know, it's just me. But long story short, they said that within this month of me posting this video, that their nozzles would be up in their store, and essentially probably Amazon and whatnot. So I was checking every single day, and still to this day, they're not there yet. And I'm starting to get antsy because I've made the 0.6, oh, my light's gone out. Shit. I'm just gonna have to roll with one light. So where was I? So I was making the 0.6mm work. The prints were coming out great. Now, before I got this working, I had 3 all-nighters to get it to work. And this is the next point that I want to make if you're going to buy this. If you're new to 3D printing, if this is the first time you've gone direct drive, if the word firmware scares you, I would not recommend getting this. Now, I have not had any other experience with any other direct drive or any other type of extruder. So this could also follow, this could also apply to any of those as well. You will have to really muck around with, you'll have to find a mount for your printer. I found that the Neptune 2, that one of the things that they have different from the Ender 3 is where it's screwed to the gantry. It is different from the Ender 3. So I could only find one mount that was designed for it, and it wasn't designed very well. Printing it several times, I kept cutting pieces off of it because it didn't work right. And then I realized in the person's photo that who designed it, even they cut pieces off of it. So I had to revise it myself, but there was only one that I could find. And I wasn't comfortable enough to design my own at the time. So keep that in mind. You have to find a mount. May be difficult for your printer. You have to find a fan shroud. Now, my experience with the fan shroud files that were online, I found one that was modular and it was very high quality. It was designed very, very well. As soon as I saw it, I went, that's exactly what I need. I took a double fan setup, I printed it all out, and it didn't quite match up with the mount. So I had to print them out again, I had to make revisions. The fan shroud piece it would hit the gantry so that it didn't line up flush. So I would have to make changes to the fan shroud. Now, another problem that I had, I'm going to put it up on screen, was the fans will come in from the side and the front and the back, but there's nothing on the other side. So what I would have is this powerful airflow come through and cool down all of this side, but this side would not get that cooling. And I started getting this weird issue where like strands of fine filament would start to accumulate on the print. I don't really know how to solve that. So I'm assuming that I'm probably going to need at least a 3-prong, like a triangle or a circular fan duct, or at least one that's just left and right. Now, another issue, put that on screen, is one of my prints, or all of my prints actually, they're showing on that side that they're getting too hot and they're not cooling down fast enough and they're causing weird warping issues. So you'll have to find a fan shroud that works as well. Then what you're going to need to do is, because the nozzle does not line up. Now this probably does apply to most other extruders that you're buying. The nozzle doesn't line up to where your original nozzle was. So now the firmware thinks it's somewhere it's not. And then depending on the BL Touch mount that you print, which is hopefully compatible with the mount that you downloaded or the fan shroud that you downloaded, that will determine where the BL Touch sits in conjunction with the nozzle. But you also have to tell the printer that information as well. So how do you do that? Well, I was using a firmware at the time. I had swapped to Marlin 2.0. I had gone from the factory firmware to running Marlin 2.0. And there was a person called It's Just Trey on a GitHub who had their Marlin uploaded for anyone to use. So I'd been using that. The problem is I can't just input through G-code where the nozzle and the BL Touch are for it to function correctly. So now you have to build your own firmware, which I'd never done before. It's more straightforward than I thought, but it did take many hours to understand and learn because there were issues along the way. I tried to get help and it didn't quite work out. It was all trial and error. And I'm quite good at trial and error to figure out things and learn. And if you're not quite there, if you don't think that's really your style, maybe don't buy one. Because you may not be able to get the help that you need to figure it out, and you may just get really frustrated. But like I said, I did 3 all-nighters to get this to work, sleeping here and there, and I finally got it to work, and it was a 0.6mm nozzle. Now, I was content enough. I wanted more space. I decided to buy a second one, so I bought a second one and it came. I was more prepared this time. Of course, I'd spent 3 days learning on what I needed to do, and I'd already got the firmware set up and everything, so it was going to be an easier process. So I had the second one, and I started to install it, and everything looked like it was going to work out. I still had to change the mount and whatnot, but I got it up and running. Right, I turn it on, I go to print, I increase the nozzle temperature, and I go to load the filament, and as I load the filament in, it goes to a certain distance inside and then stops. Usually you would spin the gear to continue loading it, and it would not load. It wouldn't budge at all. It would go back, but it wouldn't go down. And so I thought, what the hell is going on here? There is a little screw that you can adjust that there must be 2 gears that push against the filament to load it. And I thought maybe it's too tight, maybe it's too loose. I started experimenting with that. Couldn't get it to work. And then I decided I would take the hot end, the heat blocker off, and inside the throat tube, I could see a little bit of black. Now, I was loading black filament. However, I don't believe that this was my filament, and you'll understand why here in a minute. I took the throat tube out of the heat block, and I heated it with a blowtorch so that I could easily melt what was inside, and it melted, and it dripped down, and it was empty. And I said, okay, very interesting. Now, I had put the temperature up to 245, which was the max that I could choose, and I couldn't get the filament to load, that's strange, right? So I look at the nozzle. There's filament in the nozzle. There's no way that could get there because I couldn't load it into that nozzle. So the nozzle was used. Now, we all understand when we buy things from Amazon, it can be used. We can send things away. They can have a quick look and say that there's nothing wrong with it and throw it back on the shelf and you can buy it. And we've all had a package that we could tell was used. Typically, I don't care. But this nozzle had clearly had a piece of filament stuck in it. I only print with PLA, so I only need to print up to like 220. I, of course, did 245 and it still wouldn't work. So it must be some form of filament that requires much higher temperatures that I couldn't produce. So I couldn't melt the filament out of that nozzle. That was my issue. Now, I stupidly decided to take the nozzle out of the heat block, and I did not do that when it was super hot. And I snapped the head off of the nozzle. Now, the V2S Lite is made of things so that it is light. Here's a picture, I actually snapped the head of some of the screws because they were so soft. So I snapped the nozzle. Well, here's my issue. They give you one and you can't buy any. So away I go to the customer support again, knowing that it would take days for them to get back to me, weeks to probably receive another nozzle. I said, hey, I showed them a picture. I said, look, this is what's happened. It had filament in it that I couldn't melt, blah, blah, blah. Told them the story. I said, here you go. What can we do? I obviously can't buy any like you've said. So what are we going to do from here? What can we do? 2 days go by. They get back to me. And the response is, how did you even do that? Pretty much that's just what they said. They were so shocked that I snapped the head off of the nozzle. That's all their response was. And honestly, I don't know why I expect anything different because of my experience before. So I'm sitting there knowing that it's a Thursday. I'm going to respond and it's probably going to be read on Monday. And then it's probably going to ship from anywhere on the planet. And it's probably going to take at least a week to get there. And I just can't do that. I have orders. I need it up and running. So this is what I've decided to do. I have not been able to install it yet, but I wanted to keep the long nozzle. So not this M4 nozzle that you can't buy. You can get M6 nozzles for volcanoes. So I decided, is there a heat block that I can get that I can put on this that will take volcano nozzles so I can just get rid of this heat block? And I don't even have to respond to them. I can't deal with it any longer. It's ridiculous that a product has been created that uses consumables. Like, I broke that nozzle, but let's say there was a problem with that nozzle. Let's say that you ran wood through it and you bore it out to 0.8 or 1.1 or whatever. Now it's not a 0.6. What can you do? You can't get any. So I looked online. I saw that there were heat blocks. They were, I don't know, $15 each or something. I thought, great, that's what I'm going to do. So I bought heat blocks. I made sure that the size was correct. Got nozzles. Got a rubber cap that goes on it as well to keep the heat inside. Now, I did unfortunately forget that the throat tube, while it's 6 millimeters on the top, the tube, the thread on the bottom was 4. It was M4, not M6. So I had to go ahead and buy more of those. Funnily enough, from Biqu, it was the only one that I could find that the measurement seemed to work out. Now, the one key thing here is that with the Lite, the heat block that came with it is very light. It's like a feather. It basically floats in the sky. It's just crazy, crazy light. The heat block for the volcano, by comparison, is very heavy. I don't think it's probably going to cause any problems, but the difference is fairly significant, so I feel like I need to explain that. So let me just break down what you're going to experience if you want to buy this product. The pros are that it is made well. I can tell that it's made well. The clicking gear issue seems to be on this the same as what I could find on all of the other versions on YouTube with videos. The gears click purely because the bearing inside that the gear is connected to has the tiniest amount of play that when the gear moves back and forth, the bearing shifts left and right, and it just happens to tap the inside. So if you were to take it all apart, you could put Teflon tape around the bearing, just one piece, because it's so fine that when you put it back in and it's all greased up, it won't click anymore. Mine does click. I'm probably not going to take it apart because I just don't want the hassle, but just keep that in mind. It is made very well though. It prints quite well as well. I'll put a clip on screen of a sparkle filament that I print with. It's a black. The lizard you can see is more gray and the sparkle is not quite as pronounced. Now this could just be because it's a 0.6 nozzle and not a 0.4 nozzle. I'm not sure because I haven't been able to print at a smaller size, but the black is very much more pronounced in the Ghost. The sparkle is better. So overall the print quality has been amazing, and the only issue that I have had with the prints is coming from the fan shroud. So the actual product itself is actually quite nice. The cons, you will have to wait to buy what I'm essentially assuming is pretty much proprietary nozzles. You got to buy them from them only. I can't see that they're using a nozzle that they didn't create, or else I probably would have found it elsewhere. So you either stick with them, have to pay whatever they charge, and you'll have to wait till they even come out, or you have to buy heat blocks, the rubber cap, the nozzles, and a throat tube. Now all up, that probably costed me for the two, it was probably like $40 or $50 US each, on top of the $80 that I paid for the extruder. So you what's that, 60% more? It really should have come that way. It is what it is. The cons are you will also have to build your own firmware. You'll have to figure out and measure where the nozzle is. One con that I didn't talk about is that you will lose bed space. So the extruder being this long, well, longer than normal, when it moves left and right, you're going to max out the gantry faster. So you're going to lose bed space and width, as well as where the nozzle sits further out, you're going to lose bed space in depth as well. So essentially I went from what I think was like 230 by 230. I think we're down to 210. I think maybe I just do 200 flat to make sure that the bed will print correctly. So that's another con. You will have to find a mount, which depending on your printer might be difficult, or you'll have to design your own, as well as the fan shroud as well, and as well as the BL Touch mount as well. But in saying that, that's not necessarily a con with this particular extruder, because you'll have to do that with probably any extruder that you get as well. So take that for what you will. Would I recommend this extruder? It's very hard to say. It's very hard to recommend it, because while the product's great, the service is not. The fact they even decided to create a problem so that they could sell the solution already doesn't sit well with me, because that means you're going to be supporting that brand, that company. They're the company you're going to have to go to who customer support is not that great. If there's any issues, that may make or break you. I feel like I would still recommend it if you're willing to go through what you need to, if you're willing to buy the extra pieces. Again, I'll make an update video once I have this installed. I should have it installed tomorrow, to let you guys know like how it prints and if it works well, and if I would then still recommend getting the heat block and whatnot. But that was my experience. I wasn't expecting it. It was all shiny and new in the box when I opened it, and I was very excited, but the learning curve that I had to really take on and the time that I had to sink into it. Again, a lot of it was user error, and a lot of it was because I had to change the mount. I had to figure out what's going on with the mount and the fan shroud, how it was going to attach to the gantry. All of these things were really on me. So it probably wouldn't take you as long if you're more experienced. If you are, I probably would recommend it, because you probably don't even need the support. But that was my experience, and I felt like I really needed to make a video about it to help others in case they're looking at buying it and they happen to see this video. You know what you're in for, buy accordingly. All of the things that I mentioned will be in links in the description. The nozzles, the heat blocks, the silicon cups for those. I had to buy more thermistors because the thermistor that it came with wasn't that great and it was giving me errors. So that will be down there too. The extruder itself will be down there as well. And I want to link the mount and the fan shroud that I use for the Neptune 2, but I've had to tweak it so much that I feel like I still need to figure out a better fan shroud. And then maybe I'll upload a link to that to go to that STL, and you guys can download it too if you guys have Neptune 2s as well. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Bit more of like a story time sort of thing, but I like telling stories and you guys needed to be informed. So thank you for sticking out with me. I really do appreciate it. If you like this video, I'm going to be making more along the lines of 3D printing parts, tips and tricks on how to make your 3D prints better. I love photography, so photography gear as well, if you're into that sort of scene. Anything technology, really. Reviews and whatnot, just to like let you guys know if anything is worth purchasing or not. If you like the sound of that, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it if you liked the video. It would really, really help me out. Put a lot of time into this one. And see you guys in the next one. Peace.